Hello, friends, and good afternoon here from Finland. We're beginning on program 13 of the 6 stages of discipleship, and I've sent out to you the program from yesterday. I did that today. That was program 12. I'd like to make a little segue. Remember, we've been talking here about establishing the will. How does it go here? The will to love with the fiery essence. That's how it goes. And then when that is established, then a transition from the astral plane to the mental in this stage of Chela in the light, and an ability to distinguish infallibly between the pairs of opposites, and also the attack against glamour. All that can come about. A transition, a transformation, a transmutation. Master DK has given us so many excellent mnemonics to help us remember, but then, of course, if you really look at it, he's given us more than we can possibly remember, I would say. But certain things will strike us, and when they do, we can build upon them. We've learned that the Chela, the guiding Chela, is much more advanced than the Chela in the light, and my hypothesis is that the guiding Chela is at least the Chela within the aura. It can thereby set up an interview with the master upon demand. And when there is sufficient of this guidance, there will be produced hierarchical integrity eventually, and a close relationship between humanity and the hierarchy. We're trying to bring that about even right now. A triangle with arrows going between the vertices in both directions is the desirable condition for the future. Back and forth from hierarchy to Shambhala to hierarchy, back and forth from humanity to hierarchy, and back and forth from Shambhala to humanity. We're not there yet. And then this kind of segue statement, thinking back that this was written in the 1930s. At this time, there is a great increase in the number of people who are being thus related. And the senior disciples, what makes a senior disciple? I mean, I suspect it's going to be the period around the third initiation and beyond. Maybe sometimes we can consider an experienced second degree disciple who is beginning to converge upon the third degree as a senior disciple. I mean, after we prove ourselves in the deserts of experience and have overcome on our particular level, not the level of the Christ, of course, but on our particular level, the three temptations, and are moving then with much greater freedom towards the third degree, maybe we can be considered to be senior disciples. So right now, or well, within this century anyway, there is a great increase in the number of people thus related. And the senior disciples of all the masters who take Chelas, because some do not, we realize, these senior disciples are exceedingly busy with the training of aspirants who have naturally, being true aspirants, taken the first degree, as well as with the work entailed by the gravity of the world crisis. And when this was written, we were heading into this Second World War. The chance of avoiding it was there, but that opportunity was not sufficiently taken. So think of how it works out. The farther you go, the more responsibility you have. And these particular senior disciples would be training the lesser disciples and also working with the world crisis. The aspirants thus trained, are in reality the nucleus of the future world servers. That's anticipating that group would continue to grow. And the occultly trained members have to form the nucleus of the new group of world servers, even though those who are not trained in that manner do often very good work. So these trained aspirants are to be the nucleus of the future world servers, and now is the future, and are consequently of real importance, at least giving the higher powers a group instrument with which to work. So we finished program 12, and I think I should have written here that it's the 8th of June. And now we're beginning on the 9th. The task of those thus engaged falls into 3 categories. As the senior disciples and initiates, well, from that point of view, the Senior disciple can be one maybe close to the third degree, but not yet of the third degree. And yet I think it's possible also to think of senior disciples as having taken the third degree. So the task falls into three categories. As the senior disciples and initiates are thus occupied, they are themselves learning much. Now that's even true of solar angels. They are not quite avataric. An avatar descends with nothing individual to gain by the descent. It's pure altruism without expectation of gain. Of course, I cannot help but think that there will be gain, but that is not the motive at all. And therefore, their descent is not entirely necessary. It's a free will choice. For the solar angels, it is necessary to supervise the development of a human being. And this will also be the case in the next solar system, next major solar system, even though there will be differences in the arena in which the solar angels work. For instance, the interplay with the human beings of the period will take place on the monadic plane. So we have three categories. And they are learning much. Now, what are the three categories of work? We do realize, don't we, that we're really being given the perspective, not of the longing aspirant and disciple, but the perspective of a higher supervising being. And interestingly, you know, in this particular second category or stage, the Chela in the light may not at all be outwardly aware of the guidance he is receiving, nor of the reporting that is going on. You can imagine what tremendous foresight a master has to have to see the potential in someone who probably appears to have many faults. So, as I said, this descent is not entirely avataric. And what are the three categories of work? Let's see if we can gather this. Number one, the establishment of magnetic influence. Number two, the setting up of telepathic rapport. We remember that on the first subplane of the mental plane comes this capacity for spiritual telepathy. And number three, the making of basic karmic readjustments. Both the chela in the light and the supervising chela are still possessed of karma, and they both still have karma to work through. Well, I will make this bold so we can see what are the three, how does he describe it here? Three categories of work. Oh, I've done that again, haven't I? Let's see if I can make it a bit, yeah. Whoa. Okay. Now, it's a dual type of work. There is the sense of the higher power, the sense of the soul. There is not yet focus as true meditation requires within the causal body, but there is the sense that the egoic lotus and something we call the soul or solar angel or angel of the presence can be influential. A lot of people don't have the technicalities on this. They simply call it the higher power. And there is a great deal of focus from this higher downward gazing soul, as we see from the very beginning of the rules of white magic. So let's see to what extent the disciple is working and to what extent the supervising higher power, soul, angel of the presence, master, solar angel, to what extent this collection of higher influences is working and how it does work. There must be, I suppose, a magnetic influence whereby the chela in the light is evoked by the higher supervising disciple. There must be eventually a setting up of telepathic rapport, which developed so thoroughly in the case of DK and AAB, Maybe that is where it got its start, you know. And some writings there are that seem to suggest that. And, well, the soul is a kind of lord of karma. The angel of the presence is too. The master too knows the karma and can even be asked to precipitate that karma. Sometimes the disciple does not know the severity of what he's asking for. This took place in the case of T. Suba Ro, who was, we are told, Blavatsky's equivalent in status, and he asked that all his karma be precipitated. He asked his master that. For whatever reason, it appears that his master complied. And for that personality incarnation of T. Suba Ro, it was the end. Was it Hodgkin's disease or something of that nature? Some of these things are so intimate and so internal to the relationship between the master and the disciple. Of course, in this case, it was a higher disciple and a master was involved. Maybe we don't know which one, but apparently they were both first-grade disciples, T. Suba Ro and H.P.B. But requests can even be made at that time, high up on the ladder of attainment. And maybe the first-rate types have this fortitude to want to go through it all at once and get it out of the way. We hear stories about the maybe every other day blood transfusions that Alice Bailey had to go through towards the end of her life. And DK offered to ameliorate her situation, but being on the first ray, at least as far as the personality was concerned, she wanted to move through it and go beyond it. It's difficult to know what we would do in such a case. I mean, Alice Bailey was most definitely a third-degree initiate eventually. And through the kind of life she was leading, it seems that she was doing much preparation for the life of the great renunciation. And probably my guess here anyway is that her next incarnation will feature that great renunciation and thus the fourth degree. Now, let's see here. The first task which confronts disciples is to arrive at an understanding of the nature of the aspirants for whom they have made themselves responsible, and also to establish a zone or path of influence, so that they can definitely be useful and be able to communicate. Now, what I would ask here, I would ask, is this the magnetic rapport mentioned immediately above? It's a question. Well, are we talking here about a high disciple who is responsible for a chela in the light, so that they can be definitely useful and able to communicate with the aspirant? Let's see if I can, there we go. And for those of us who think that we may be passing through this stage of chela in the light, do we have the sense that there is some kind of magnetic rapport, some kind of internal cooperation going on? Maybe in the hours of sleep, we're more likely to find it. It might be pointed out that in the past, such relationships were between soul and soul, and consequently required a long period of bringing through to adequate recognition in the mind and brain of the aspirant. Well, apparently there has been a change in policy, in the method now being used. Between soul and soul, that's much faster, of course. And the main impact of the helping disciple, I guess all of us are turning into helping disciples, because there's always someone coming up that needs what we have developed and in whom we can help to instill that needed quality or qualities, because we have developed them ourselves. A long period of bringing through. Our influence from above is of the angel of the presence, of the master, of our own monadic extension onto the higher mental plane. It seems to me like a threefold flow, which is impressing us from above. And how shall we recognize the feel of this impression? Well, certainly it has the selfless quality. It is filled with something more advanced than we so often denominate as love. And there's a special type of revelatory light which comes through. If we pause, can you detect from whence such an influence becomes impressive in your life? Well, timing is a big issue. And in these emergency times, the more rapidly, the more accurately we can bring through that which is impulsed from above, the more useful we can be in service. Now, he goes on, today, this method still persists in the majority of cases, but many of these helping disciples, so we are here definitely also talking about the supervising, helping disciple, are experimenting under the direction of their master, to whom they report, in working directly with the aspirant upon the physical plane, thus involving personality as well as soul relation. That's an important factor to note. And that was 80 years ago, or maybe a bit more. So always new techniques are being suggested, experimented with, based upon the possible attainments of the more modern disciple. Now, maybe every disciple is a helping disciple in some sense, but we are talking about a specific kind of helping disciple, one who is a constant guide in one way or another to a chela in the light. So there will be the continuation of soul relation, but add to it the continuation of soul relation, but added to it is the relation to the personality. Yeah. Now this constitutes, says the Tibetan, a far more difficult relationship. But is a part of the new process of externalizing the hierarchical efforts, of which all outer ashrams, which are now slowly forming as DK was doing some work in formation and others are as well. It's part of the new work. And by means of this, the Chela in the light is trained to recognize members of the hierarchy by first becoming aware of disciples more advanced than himself, maybe in little Chelaship, but also, we might say in this second stage, and by learning to give due weight to their words and suggestions. This is the factor of recognition. And we can hear many people say many things and not be particularly inclined to take it in. But maybe if we look around our lives, our particular incarnation now, we will even find such a person or persons who may be appearing on the outer plane as well. And then we'll also have an inner soul relationship with the Chela in the light. And maybe it will come through to us, identifying those whose words and suggestions and indications should be given due weight. Now, naturally, DK's groups, outer groups, at one point being told they were accepted disciples, would realize that for such a relationship to occur, the teacher had to be a master, because it is the master who accepts the disciple after the disciple makes certain acceptances and pledges. So there would be a natural inclination to obey what is suggested by the supervising master, though I guess we would all be surprised that that inclination to obey and to follow out what the master suggests was not universal in application. There's just some who didn't pay all that much attention to it. And we maybe say to ourselves, well, if I were in that position, I certainly would pay very close attention to all that the master was saying, because I would know it was the best possible advice, but we never know. We never know. And this was in an earlier time. There has been since that time a great consciousness revolution coming from the East to the West. And people have learned so much more about meditation, about spiritual training. They've been exposed to so much more esoteric literature of high quality. You know, maybe now then they are ready to obey. As DK says, if you give someone a special breathing exercise, they're going to follow it assiduously. But if you tell them to serve and obey, which are the real fundamentals of progress, they may think it's not all that interesting. So, look around your life. And maybe emerging from your acquaintances and friends will be those you know you can assist, and also those to whom you must look for guidance. And it's difficult to say, but perhaps such a person is also your higher guiding disciple on the inner planes, and not just as in Shayla, little Shayla ship, someone who gives good external guidance. It's difficult to assess the attainments of another, but Master DK has given so many indications that he has helped us assess their quality. So here is his summary. You can see, therefore, how a great effort is being made to bring the two centers, hierarchy and humanity and the hierarchy, into a much closer rapport and relationship, both objectively and subjectively. Our friend humanity seems to be much under the third ray, and when it comes to the hierarchy, much under the second ray. Whoop, that was not good. I hit the wrong one. There we go. And this was 80-something years ago. Now, once we get through certain great conflicts with the desperate Black Lodge, the progress along these lines will be much more rapid than it has been heretofore. So why is hierarchy expending all this effort? Well, they know the plan, or at least a great deal of it. And they are utterly pledged, utterly committed to helping the Christ and Sanat Kumara bring through the plan of the planetary logos, which is an aspect of the plan of the solar logos, who is also going through initiation. This is a busy time, very busy time for hierarchy. Far more busy than we can imagine. There is this peculiar story about Master M rushing into a room, taking off one hat, putting on another, which of course is a great symbol of task and identity, and rushing out to do whatever he had to do. We have no idea how hard is the work and how unremitting is that work by ever more senior disciples, including the initiates and the masters. And as far as our earth humanity is concerned, above all the Christ. I don't think we can understand what it's like to be the Christ. Maybe there will be various ways we can enter into that mind as it is in Christ. Maybe we can gather a little more of an inkling of how, again, unremitting is his work, how very watchful is his work, because as it is said, every true aspirant is known to the Christ. Well, that would make sense, because the true aspirant has taken the first initiation. And at least at this time, the Christ is the initiator for these first two initiations of the threshold. And isn't it amazing? Somehow the Christ takes the first degree again every time he initiates the neophyte into the first degree. What a marvelous system initiation is, and how much it has to be understood by people who satisfy themselves with the customary dogmatism, which really isn't going anywhere. As DK told us, the three Abrahamic religions in their present form, they really are passé. They are worn out. So what will take their place? Well, certainly a more esoteric understanding of what they really mean. And then an adherence to the opportunities which they can offer. All who have in this life transited, I use a mixture of British and American spelling, so it's hard to know. Yeah, I see what I see what is the problem. Two T's. Well, we'll allow that to pass and add it to the dictionary. All who have in this life transited from the stage of Chela in the light to that of accepted disciple have established two recognitions. And it is my hope, and you know, a hope that so many of us who have been in the stage, the second and very populated stage of Chela in the light, will be able to enter a new relationship, not just with a supervising Chela of higher degree, but with the master himself, and become accepted disciples. It is not so intensely difficult that it is beyond our range. I mean, if you really look at the people who were gathered around Master Decay, at least in my opinion, they were very much like we are. Of course, some were more advanced, but the bulk, the majority were, I would say, as we are. And if quite a few of them could be swept into the new seed group, which he created in 1939 and 1940 in the first desperate hours of World War II, if they could be swept in, we too can be swept in if we hold what the studies will reveal to us about that stage. And a lot of what I've done here with Chela in the Light really has to be reviewed. There are changes in this stage, definite changes from little Chela-ship. And we want to see if we can bring those changes about so that we are the material which can be swept into accepted discipleship. Not all of DK's students were. They, some of them had reached their, as he said, their high water mark, and he had the foresight to see whether they could really benefit from that stage of acceptance. Maybe we don't have that kind of foresight, but we can always look forward to the next initiation and to our next task regarding initiation. Every true disciple is moving towards a particular initiation. And, you know, usually, as I've said, it's the second initiation, usually. Others had gone beyond that, and there was a man being trained for the third initiation, and DK, not just sentimentally, but helpfully said, "You remind me of myself when I was preparing for the third initiation." DK, Master DK, says nothing which does not have a beneficent and uplifting, illuminative, harmonizing purpose. If he says something that looks like a kind of a reminiscence, oh, by the way, you remind me of myself. No, there's a lesson behind it for the person to whom it is told. So never think that Master DK's work and words are simply casual. He can slip in so many hints of which we may not be aware. And we have to become aware of what he's really trying to convey. So if we have gone into this stage of accepted disciple, 2 recognitions will have been established in our consciousness. Number 1, a recognition of the, who was that senior disciple So a recognition of the senior disciple whom they have discovered in the light. The more they have a connection with the light, which seems to be beaming down into their life, the more readily they're going to recognize the guiding disciple as at least one of the sources of that light. And also they will have a recognition of the master. This whole question of recognizing the master will be dealt with by me later. So just memorize those two things. If you are a chela in the light, but you have made the transition into accepted discipleship, you're going to recognize two sources of very powerful spiritual stimulation. One will be your more advanced guiding disciple, and the other will be actually the master who has stood behind the disciple and stood behind that guiding disciple and watched you, maybe over a period of a few lives. I mean, we can't get a big head about it, being watched by the master, because I imagine that some of what he sees is not suitable for inclusion into the kind of work he's trying to do. And it takes us a while to work our way out of foibles, which make us not very useful yet to the kind of work that the master is seeking to do. We can't ever get a big head about our progress. The beginner, he tells us, is always, did he say more conceited, or did he say consciously more conceited? Anyway, the beginner tends to think too much of himself. And therein blocks the true reception of that which can come from above, and fails to prepare himself to become a real instrument. I guess we should pause, and ask, am I, as I am, capable, really, of being an instrument of the master? Am I? And if I'm not, what's in the way? Because that really is, the master can help, but it's also very much our responsibility. The consequent developing process of that follows. So what does it do? Following the first stage and of developing rapport, magnetic, the consequent developing process of telepathic interplay is one which should be most carefully studied. Well, we do study it with respect to accepted disciples, and we have to do that also for the Chela in the light. All groups of disciples working in or out of an ashram, because of course not all are accepted yet, right? So not all are in the ashram or on the periphery of the ashram, should be in close telepathic rapport and thus provide a training ground for the development of this type of sensitivity. Maybe it's not so easy. I've been involved in experiments like this with quite an advanced disciple. It seems that in the telepathic experiments, he would get the word or phrase which was being sent out, and others would not. But as disciples, as probationary disciples, of course, we're working out from an ashram. As accepted disciples, we're working in the ashram, or at least standing on its periphery. The first thing that has to be established in a group of disciples is love and trust. For without that, there can be no true transference of thought. Well, that's one of those golden statements. Where love and trust do not exist, they must be definitely and consciously developed, and apparently they can be. DK basically is telling us right here, yes, they can be definitely developed. But think about the groups in which you participate. Do you detect that love and trust prevail? Or do you sense subtle lines of cleavage which prevent a general pervasive lovingness, and which certainly eat away at the trust which otherwise you should have? It's not easy. Love and trust. There are always these personal factors. And the love and trust development is often far from perfect. I speak of my own experience, at least, and maybe you have other experiences, I don't know. Now, love and trust. So this is about developing the process of telepathic interplay. And that's the first kind of requirement. Right. Love and trust. A second rule governs this telepathic relationship, and this is that all crises of criticism must be most carefully avoided by all disciples if they want to bring about the needed rhythm. Crises of criticism, yeah, if they want to bring that about. The needed rhythm. And of course, if the second ray is prominent, then these crises will be avoided. So we're talking about telepathic relationship. And this crisis of criticism, well, it's a glamour-inducing activity, along with suspicion and self-pity. I think criticism belongs particularly to the third ray. So in any case, this crisis of criticism must be most carefully avoided by all disciples if they want to bring about the needed rhythm. In any group of disciples, there are those who do not put first things first. Well, okay, simply a statement and based upon experience. They put many things and people before their duty and spiritual responsibilities. This necessarily gives their fellow disciples just grounds, apparently thus, for criticism. There are times when criticism is unquestionably a recognition of fact. This means that a criticizing disciple has reached the point where his judgment is so based on love, this is the key, that it produces no personality effect in his own life or that of his fellow disciple. It is simply a loving recognition of limitation and only becomes wrong when these undoubted facts are used to arouse criticism in the unqualified and provide points of discussion. Okay. The disciple or aspirant who has glaring faults and who fails to make the required changes himself creates a barrier which he must in time destroy, removing all causes for criticism. And these barriers prevent free telepathic communication. Well, okay. It's still a complicated problem. Sometimes DK advises us that we must become as cul-de-sacs when we hear criticism of another, and we certainly don't pass it on to foment an ongoing attitude of criticism. There are some who will resist any form of change. And then the question comes, what do you do about that? When they really resist, or maybe we ourselves have been the resisting one, the kind of change which would be eliminative of the barrier to free telepathic communication. What to do? And this stage of free telepathic transmission between the members of a group, among the members of the group, is entirely necessary. So what do we do? An interesting question can be asked at this point, and one which should unquestionably arise. Is the group of working disciples to be keyed to the notes of the more advanced disciples in the group, or is it to be stepped down to a generally lower average to suit the least advanced? Well, this kind of question will arise, and DK tells us, yes, it should arise. Should unquestionably arise. And so he puts it in another, he reframes the question. Let us put it in another form. Are the least evolved in the group of disciples and aspirants to pull down to their level and understanding the more developed? Will they make a supreme effort to measure up to the higher vision and attain to the attitudes and points of view of the more advanced? These questions provide a fundamental problem in all ashrams, and only the chelas themselves can provide the answers. How have you addressed this question? If this kind of thing has come up? I think it must be very difficult for the leader of a group. I'm thinking of right now of my arcane school experience, and I'm thinking of Mary Bailey and her, I think, quite advanced point of view. And to watch, of course, how the workers in headquarters, subject to her guidance and discipline, how they did not meet that standard. It seemed to me that she held the standard, and did not let it descend into anything really ordinary or less than it could be. I so often remember her saying, well, you can't do that, as if there was this standard that had to be maintained. Let's see. So there are the karmic adjustments. I think somewhere up here we have a few. Yes, the magnetic imp. These are the three we are discussing, and DK basically is saying, look, in this matter of telepathic rapport and what is needed when possible crises of criticism arise, the group itself has to find the way. And now we're talking about the third point, the making of basic karmic adjustments. These now are the three categories of work that involve the supervising disciple in the stage of Chela, Chela in the light, but also involve the requirement that as they begin to understand, the disciples themselves address these issues. So magnetic influence is the first. The telepathic rapport is the second, and the making of karmic adjustments, the third. And we've looked at telepathic rapport. We've moved on from magnetic relationship to a consequent telepathic rapport. And what is required love and trust. So first, oh goodness, see if I can get this correct. Love and trust, and then avoiding crises of criticism, but working this out within the group. Now we move on to these karmic adjustments. In the mastering of the task, it's aspect. Let's see, where are we here? I think I've suddenly made everything disappear. Yeah, right here. So in the mastering of the task, and this is the third type of work, of karmic adjustment, the guiding disciple is governed by certain requirements. Okay. Sometimes it's a little difficult to follow all these outlines, but because DK is detailed in his expression of them. In the mastering of the task of karmic adjustment, following upon magnetic rapport and telepathic rapport, the guiding disciple is governed by certain requirements. He must ascertain just what karma must be worked out by the aspirant in his charge during this incarnation. Now, he, as I say, need not necessarily be in the body to do this. And this seems like a very acute type of discernment. He has to be a high disciple here to really discover, ascertain, be certain of. That's what ascertain means. Just what karma must be worked out by the aspirant in his charge. We can't talk about what might be ideal to work out, but that which is a requirement. He must then induce him. I mean, it's not exactly a karmic dump, is it? The supervising disciple is not throwing this karma upon the chela in the light, but rather he has to somehow impress the chela in the light, induce him to add to this established karma what I might call freeing karma. Now that's important. So there is established karma, it's going to happen. This is part of the forcing process to which those who choose the more difficult way of initiation must subject themselves voluntarily and by free choice. The taking on of freeing karma. Now, as you look at your life, do you have the sense that indeed you have taken on freeing karma? How would you identify it? Karma and dharma become curiously intertwined, and maybe karmic opportunity is offered to express a new aspect of the dharma or purpose. But there are definitely aspects of work which can be taken on and which don't have to be taken on. Do you find that in your life there are such, at least according to your estimation? And I would say usually if you find that there is the presence of freeing karma, which you have under impression or induction taken on. It will involve sacrifice. The disciple seeks to do certain things in this connection. The, let's call it guiding. The guiding disciple seeks to do certain things. In this connection, referring here to the Chela in the light. Well, maybe not. It's not the guiding disciple. I'm mistaken. Now we're talking about the aspiring disciple. Because DK says, referring here to the Chela in the light, he works off unavoidable karma as intelligently and as consciously as possible. So what should we say? He fulfills the duties which come to him and present themselves as inevitable. You know, let's say you have to take care of a sick parent or a child who has special needs and so forth. These things present as inevitable. And then, in addition, he takes on some karma which ordinarily would be precipitated in some later life. And this, what should we say? This requires great focus and energy. And that's still his own personal karma. And he begins to shoulder some of the general karma of humanity, increasing his own load of karma. So we might say, helping the group humanity more than otherwise might be the case. And, it really keeps going, doesn't it? He begins to work with and to comprehend something of planetary karma. Well, there are a number of people who really are thinking about the welfare of the planet. He begins to work with and to comprehend something of planetary karma. The saving of the lungs of the planet, the great rainforests, and the taking on of man-made climate change, which tends in the wrong direction. Though as yet, he undertakes no responsibility in this connection. It's too big, but at least he tries to be helpful. And there are many ecologically minded disciples who realize that in many ways our planet is in peril. And at least he begins to orient his consciousness in the attempt to comprehend something of this karma and to work in a direction which helps to lighten the load, though he does not have to. Only after the third initiation does he consciously and as an individual cooperate with the karmic responsibility of the planetary logos, fulfilling within our planetary scheme and in this second major solar system, leftover tendencies from the previous 4 solar systems, but probably especially from the first major solar system conditioned by the third ray. So the disciple seeks to do certain things in this connection. And the working off of karma, the established karma, which he cannot really avoid, and he takes on additional. Now, you know, it comes to me, it flashes in my mind that this is a very Moria-like attitude. Basically, he says, Master M says, burden me still more. And I think along with it, as I enter the beautiful garden, but the burden me still more part is someone who has realized, coming from someone who has realized that obstacles are possibilities. And, you know, he says, when will you finally realize that? And the general karma of humanity, let's just say, so much of the mess we have made. We have disease, we have division, we have unfairness, we have racism, we have power madness, the abandonment of principle, big things. And we remember that a disciple, the status of a disciple will be known by how much he or she will, in addition, serve the group. So the karma of humanity. And I've got to ask myself and you, do you sense in your life that you have taken on some of the karma of humanity, and not just your own individual, personal karma? There are a lot of people who are adding to that karma and making it worse. They are building up for humanity a karmic reservoir which must overflow restraints someday. But when we deal with the problems of humanity, whoa, we are taking some of this planetary karma upon us. And sometimes the aspects of karma overlap each other. But it's worth the thought. It's worth giving attention to the thought. Yes, it is worth it. There are problems of humanity. They are along all the rays. They have to do with false teaching. They have to do with conflicts between capital and labor. They have to do with psychological rehabilitation. The churches themselves present many problems. Just the chapters in the book, The Problems of Humanity, give us an idea of what it's like to get involved with shouldering some of the general karma of humanity. And to that, those chapters, new problems have been added, and especially along the lines of psychology, and maybe now problems dealing with man and machine, and the whole question of the dangers of artificial intelligence. And some of the old Atlantean habits of mixing genetic material, truly a terrifying possibility. So probably all of us are tending towards some of this larger karma. If you're in the field of education, for instance, so much of it is inadequate today. And there are ways to treat it so that humanity will advance in a spiritual manner much more successfully. We've had a lot of old, outworn educational systems, but DK tells us in the book Education in the New Age how the educational workers can indeed contribute much. And he tells us, look, glamour, a world problem. That's all of humanity. So when we attend to the issues of the glamour of the human family and not just our own obstructions, we are shouldering some of the general karma of humanity. And if we are doing that, we should know how. And then, of course, this question of planetary karma. It's big. And probably we don't understand much about it at all, except it certainly involves an adjustment of relationship between intelligence and love, between the second ray soul of our planetary logos and his third ray personality, between the primordial ray, green, and the divine ray, blue or indigo. We have at least to think about it, even though we are by no means powerful enough, elevated enough, filled with sufficient understanding to take any kind of significant responsibility in this connection. But we can at least try to be helpful. And in all matters where the mind alone might be used, it would be perhaps a temptation to utilize what is has already been established within us, instead to bring in the love and the harmony along with mind. I'm thinking about the field of the media, and it's a third-rate thing, and it's outstandingly filled with criticism. What if more of the energy of love, wisdom, could be brought into the way that events within the entirety of humanity are viewed and reported? The day will come, of course, and the potential for all things to move towards the good, the beautiful, and the true will be accented. But right now, this one hates this one is fighting with that one. This one is accused. This one has offended. This one refuses. And that one suffers because of the refusal. That's the way it is now. And I'm not just talking about the main media, which has some degree of moderation to it very often, but these specialized, idealistically driven media outlets, which are narrow indeed and hypercritical, but only after the third initiation does he consciously and as an individual cooperate with the karmic responsibility of the planetary logos. And look, forget about forget about the solar logos for this time, because basically there's not much we can do except to help our planet fit itself, to help the solar logos work off some of its particular karma. Maybe when we are higher initiates, there will be something along that line we can do. So, magnetic relationship and telepathic interplay and karmic adjustment of varying kinds. Are we intent upon rapid progress and willing to pay the price? That's always the question, paying the price. And so often that price will affect the personality particularly and make things more burdensome for the instrument, for the personality, for the soul in incarnation within that personality. Now, DK brings up an important point. I'd like to point out that I am referring to good karma as well as bad, because karma can be retarding whether it is bad or good. You have to live through the good karma as well, and that can be a delay. It is the task of the helping disciple to guide the Chela in the light so that he does adjust his karma. And this, the senior disciple does by thought impression. In case we wondered, what is the role of the senior disciple, the behind-the-scenes guiding disciple? But good karma can be delaying in its nature. And, people hoping for a spate of good karma may not realize that entirely. How do we adjust our karma? Well, we certainly pay close attention to the people and circumstances surrounding us. Some things are just inevitable. Some things, people and circumstances seem to offer opportunity if we would but add those people and circumstances to the list of our responsibilities. I guess we've all had the experience of running into someone and having the feeling, I must help that individual. I must help to heal these circumstances, or at least I am capable of doing so. All karma, when consciously faced, is precipitated by the power of thought. And this is perhaps the major lesson which the senior disciple has to teach the neophyte. In this way, the latter is aided to see in the light which falls upon his way, and the disciple who is preparing him for the stage of accepted discipleship is in constant touch with the master. Thus, a triangular relationship is set up, which is of such occult value. I mean, it saves the master much work. It teaches the guiding disciple much. And of course, it does instruct and elevate the outer disciple, who is the chela in the light. There we go. This is very important. All karma, when consciously faced, is precipitated by the power of thought. And this is the main thing that somehow this has to be taught to the neophyte. It's not just something that comes upon you and necessarily has to surprise you. You can see under Saturn what is the karmic duty and the karmic possibilities in the circumstances which surround you. Yeah, it's a long chapter. And there, finally, on page 732, and we still have a bit to go. Right now, we're on 726, 727. So a few more pages before we reach the end, and I think I will not, make this a humongous program. Some people prefer to be able to keep going. They can listen, they can look. I think it helps to look at the text that we are, discussing. But anyway, this entire phase is setting up this relationship that we're setting up as a triple relationship. And maybe we're more likely to have an idea of who the master is behind it all than we are who may be the guiding disciple, if that guiding disciple is not also on the outer plane. I've had experiences where I know there's someone on the physical plane to whom I can look for guidance, and that someone keeps on showing up in various ways in the out-of-body state, in the dream state. So I know perhaps that there is progress and impression is being received. If the Chela in the light is truly in earnest, and really meaning what he or she says he or she means, and is consciously developing the higher sensitivity, then this stage can be relatively short. There's the word relatively. So we're talking about what, the entire stage of Chela in the light before being the accepted disciple. He says sometimes 2 lives, sometimes, not always, are sufficient to cover this period. The Tibetan had a number of chelas in the light. Of course, many of them were reaching the point where they had done the preparatory work, and so had the guiding disciple, and their acceptance as the accepted disciple was imminent. The Chela in the light is one who treads the way of what is called the lesser revelation. Lesser because it is concerned with the revelation of that which must be done in the personality life. So, no, this is incorrect. So I have to make this proper color, at least the one I've been using. So this is wrong button, right? This is very much about the path of probation. And remember, there are different ways of considering this path of probation. But before we are truly an accepted disciple, we are basically on a path of probation. It is not the way of the higher revelation of divinity and its nature. It is the revelation of that which is already manifested, and not that of what must be manifested. Ponder on this. Well, I think we can understand what he's driving at here. The true initiate is always thinking of the future, or at least of the present in the context of the future which must develop. And the personality is the result of previous causes and is already manifested. But a way of higher revelation of divinity occurs when we think of that which must be precipitated. Now, pause for a moment. What is precipitated in your life, and what could be or should be precipitated in your life, in your group, etc. See, we may have to correct that which is already precipitated, but that's still not as much the revelation of divinity as working upon bringing into manifestation that which, according to the plan, should be manifested. So basically he is saying this stage of Chela in the light, okay, it can be relatively short. It is the way of the lesser revelation of that which has been precipitated and the correction of that which should be precipitated or has been precipitated. And many things there are to correct, even on this path of lesser revelation. So then again, pausing, which path are we treading? The path of lesser revelation, or are we in fact disciples accepted by the master who are treading a way of higher revelation, of still more divine revelation? You can ask yourself that question. Now, if not 2 lives, then maybe not so very long before we straighten out through testing and self-observation and judicious reading and learning how to really meditate, till we straighten out the condition of the personality. The searchlight of the soul reveals faults in character, limitations in expression, and inadequacies in conduct. He tells us especially this is the case during the second stage of discipleship, that of Chela in the light. The era of recriminations is brought to the forefront of consciousness. Faults in character, limitations in expression, inadequacies in conduct, all this forced upon the consciousness of the individual. These must be symbolically, or rather intelligently corrected. So, pausing again. What are you correcting? What am I correcting? It's interesting too how things that have to be corrected operate in associative patterns. You can be looking at one thing, and the next thing you know, you may be back 30 or 40 years at a similar type of condition, which either points to the origin of that which has to be corrected or is similar. So there's a collection of many of these correctables that just seems to happen in a flash. And along with that can come the pain of recrimination, going over again that of which you are guilty. The revelations are sometimes very painful, and we are filled with the desire to correct them, not just a single misbehavior, but all related aspects to that misbehavior. Otherwise, how can we be ready? In the symbolic charts, now they may be sometimes astrological, not always, and I'll just put that there. Which the guiding disciple presents to the master twice a year. You wonder if it's at one of the important festivities. For instance, at the 2 solstices, perhaps. I don't know. The effort is made along these lines. The effort made along these lines is indicated and not the results. It is effort which counts. The results will be inevitable and commensurate with the effort. So indeed, we must try and try again. Twice a year. And then maybe the master can begin to judge into what degree of intimacy he can take the disciple. Because in a way, a very intimate relationship is acceptance. The master has definitely, in accepting a disciple, burdened himself still more, added weight of responsibility to his already very heavy load. Okay, now he's going to say something about the charts which are presented. When these charts, 3 in number, are geometrically related, sounds very astrological, and superimposed upon the other, they indicate a definite pattern. Then the master can gauge the rate and the type of development and can determine the time for authorizing the senior disciple to recommend the stage of accepted discipleship. So that's interesting, isn't it? It is the senior disciple who recommends accepted discipleship based upon study and observation of the Chela in the light under supervision. But the master can say, okay, at this time, I do authorize you, the senior disciple, to recommend or not recommend the stage of accepted discipleship, wherein the master would take over much fuller responsibility. When the demand of the aspirant this is synthetic. When the demand of the aspirant, the guiding disciple's recommendation, the karmic condition, and the note which the master registers coincide in time, then the 3rd stage is reached, and that of accepted whoops. Let's see, what have I got here? Having a little trouble. There we go. When the demand of the aspirant, because the aspirant cannot be passive in all this, the guiding disciple's recommendation and the karmic condition and the note which the master registers, perhaps to some degree from the study of the charts, presented to him, then the third stage is reached. Well, friends, I wonder if that is enough for right now, because I do have another broadcast coming up tonight on the science of triangles. And it looks here like there's a lot of new material. 728, 29, I think goes to, we decided 32. And then comes the study of this most important phase, that of accepted discipleship, about which we do know a little and must eventually have the experience. So basically, we're going to page 7. We've gone to page 727 from 724. So that takes us here like this. And what I'll do then is bring this down. Lots to review, isn't there? If you think you've read the book once and you're ready, well, you're not ready, and neither am I. So basically, this has ended program number 13 from 724 to 727, and program 14 is coming up, and it will be from 727 to something, and it will be on June the XX. If I get a chance, a little later to do this, I will do it. This one has been completed on the 9th of June, and we'll see when we can begin again. Well, it all may seem a little bit complex, but to the simplified vision of the guiding disciple and to the master, ascertainment of the right times and seasons can be seen much more easily than we can see them. But notice the triple coincidence: the demand of the aspirant, the guiding disciple's recommendation based upon the gathering of charts and simply upon observation, and also the karmic condition, which the master registers, because he will not take into his group of accepted disciples someone who from the beginning he knows cannot succeed. So when all these things coincide in time, and let's just call this, we'll call it a, triple coincidence. Then the third stage is reached, another 5 pages or so, and we will be studying that all-important third stage of accepted discipleship, towards which so many chelas in the light are moving, and our job is to help them move more intelligently and more efficiently. Okay, friends, so hopefully I haven't made any big errors here, and you've been able to see the script when I'm talking about it. So we will now stop the recording and a little later go on to program 14. Let's make just sure. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So lots of love and many blessings from Tui and myself and the whole communications team. We're doing our best to huge bumblebee around my head. Whoa. We're doing our best to bring the ageless wisdom into deeper comprehension. Okay.